Hi, I'm Joey with the Garmin team, and behind me here I have an upgraded Cirrus kiosk with some of our latest products that I'm really excited to show you. Let's have a look. So we'll start here right in the center stack where you traditionally would have all your radios, and you can see that we've got two products here that help us with all of that. The GTN 750 Xi and the GTN 650 Xi. Now these are the popular GPS nav, a VHF nav radio, and a comm radio, all three functions built into one product with a multifunction moving map display with all of the situational awareness around us. The GTN 750 Xi is controlling our audio. So we have an audio panel that's built into it, or behind the scenes anyways, that it's controlling. And we have a transponder that we're controlling. Now this helps us take credit for those and provide more display real estate and really help streamline our traditional radio stack as you see it here. So now we'll move up to the TXi flight displays. And we've got the G500 TXi here in a primary flight display. Now think of your existing mechanical, gyro-driven instruments that are helping you through flight, like your attitude indicator, altimeter, airspeed, etc. This is going to take the place of all of those, or a legacy flight display that may be challenging to maintain, and consolidate it in tapes and all the modern primary flight display indications, overlay options with synthetic vision technology, as well as other really nice features and benefits that we'll talk about. You've also got our G500 TXi flight display that's showing a multifunction display. So this allows us to have a nice large moving map with respect to our aircraft's current position, and then all of the surrounding hazards we would want to be aware of, like terrain and weather. We can look at charts, we can see our position on those charts, and a lot more information. And then the third and final functionality that the G500 TXi flight display provides is engine indication system. And this is a new capability that we're offering specifically designed for Cirrus aircraft. And so you can see this strip here, and it's providing all of the indications from your engine system. And this is available for the SR20, SR22, both turbo normalized and normally aspirated aircraft. Now moving down here to the area where you would typically have your mechanical standby instruments. You can see we've got a G500 mode controller. We'll talk about that in more detail in just a moment. As well as the GI-275 electronic flight instrument. And in this case, it's a standby flight instrument to the G500 TXi flight display. And the two are integrated so that you can transfer bugs, etc. It's a really powerful instrument. For those that don't want to make the big leap to G500 TXi, and let's say you have a traditional six-pack in your Cirrus aircraft, what's real popular right now is to install one or two of these, as your replacement for your attitude indicator, as well as your HSI, or horizontal situation indicator, in a package. And so that's been a really popular place to start with your upgrade, and then you can move that instrument to the mechanical location where you have those standbys today, and then take credit for that when you install the G500 TXi. So it provides a nice stair step and way into the package over time, while taking credit for some of the investments that you have made in the aircraft. And the GI-275 in those positions will also drive the GFC 500 autopilot as well. So you can continue on that roadmap and continue to upgrade your aircraft. To the right of the TXi flight display, I don't want to leave out the GSB 15 high-speed charging port. So we've all got electronic devices. We've got an iPad here that we need to keep charged, and this helps us to do all of that in the aircraft. And then on the iPad, of course, we've got our favorite application. It's the Garmin Pilot application, which will be the application we start with in our demo. But before we get into the demo, what I'd like to do is show off some of the new features within these products that are helping make this upgrade possible for Cirrus aircraft owners. Now let's take a closer look at the engine indication system function of the G500 TXi, which really enabled this capability for Cirrus aircraft owners. And so here you're going to see a very familiar percent horsepower gauge. And so we take inputs from your manifold pressure, your RPMs, outside air temperature, and we use an algorithm that we actually teamed with Cirrus over the years to help process that information into and translate that real easily for you to reference from your pilot operating handbook, or POH, that value, and set the aircraft power based on that. So that's a really key enabling feature for EIS in these aircraft. Some of the other improvements that I'll point out is we recognize that Cirrus aircraft typically have two electrical systems. And so now you have the ability within the G500 TXi EIS system to monitor a second alternator, as we're doing in this configuration and set up here. One of the other improvements that we made to support what you're seeing here overall as a layout is you're able to put the EIS display into this single strip here on the left, and that can go on either side of the display, but we just have it here on the left. That's a real popular format, closer to the pilot in this application. And then you have the rest of the display in a very large multifunction display. And then that's even splittable into two windows. So you can have two multifunction displays in that. So you have our moving map and our position of our aircraft located there. And then I have just up here an example, a traffic page, a dedicated traffic page. Or we can go back to full just to have a nice, rich, large moving map. So you've got a lot of capability within the TXi system. So that's some of the new improvements with the MFD and EIS system within TXi. The other improvement that we made was integration with the DFC-90 autopilot, which we recognize are in several Cirrus aircraft. And so you're going to recognize and see that here on the primary flight display when you're interfaced. The team worked extremely hard to integrate this and provide the scoreboard of that information up here on the top part of the display. So that took a significant amount of investment from Garmin to bring that interface so that we could ease the burden of that upgrade for those aircraft owners that would like to keep that system. Now I'll transition to our G500, which also recently came across the finish line. And at this time is supported for SR22 aircraft, both normally aspirated and turbo normalized. We're considering the SR20 at some point in the future, but it is available today in delivering for those aircraft. And I'll just take a moment to talk a little bit about what I love about this autopilot. And really it starts with the servo. And so I happen to have a GSA-28 servo here with me. And there's really three key things that I just love about this technology that's really the enabling capability for this system and why it's so popular on the market today. And the first is back here is the motor, and you're not able to see this necessarily behind the scenes, but I'm pointing at least to where the motor is. And that's a brushless DC motor, which means that there's no friction when the motor is running. And this is a common maintenance item for traditional servos that are brushed, and they are actually touching physically the parts. And so that's a maintenance item. So this is a little more maintenance-free as a result. The second part of this technology is the smarts built into it that make it variable torque. And so what this allows us or enables the system to do is to fly the aircraft with extreme precision, and which is what we've become known for with the GFC 700 autopilot technology. So based on that same system. So it's smart. It's not set to one single torque like many common autopilots on the market. This enables us to control the aircraft with precision with the torque required in that moment. It also enables us to drive advanced applications that you might have heard of, like electronic stability and protection. So that helps us fly the aircraft when we're hand flying it within the envelope. Now, the third key technology that I get really excited about is the clutch technology that we have built in here. So this clutch design enables us to really free the motor from the flight controls. So you might have noticed when you're flying with a traditional autopilot on the market that when you're hand flying the aircraft, you're actually back controlling the servo, and you can feel that in the controls of the aircraft. Now with this technology and the way we do this, this actually releases the torque from the motor and completely disconnects the servo from the flight controls for you to move them freely. Really smart technology, modern autopilot based on the acclaimed GFC 700 autopilot. It's amazing. So a few more key enabling technologies that are simply amazing about the GFC 500 autopilot is the ability for it to talk to your aircraft's trim system. And so I've flown an older Cirrus aircraft with the autopilot system not talking to the trim system, and it commands and beeps at the pilot when it needs more trim up or down in the pitch axis. So now that we're in the loop and the trim system's in the loop, we command all of that. Number one. Number two, we also are very smart about that. So when you engage the autopilot and we're controlling the trim of the aircraft, you're handed back a perfectly trim airplane. So it's almost like we're automatically trimming the airplane for you as well. And then number three, while you're hand flying the aircraft and you command the trim, the system is smart enough to know when you're flying faster that it will slow the actual motor down, the trim motor down, so you don't get an excessive nose down pitch or nose up pitch when you're commanding the trim. So it makes for a very smooth ride overall. So these are just some of the favorite things that I have about the GFC 500 autopilot. We will demo now some of the advanced capabilities that it offers, including the vertical navigation capability when coupled with the GTN Xi series or the original GTN series, as well as the takeoff and go around. I'll discuss that. We don't have that queued up in this demo, but I will talk through some of those. So these are some advanced capabilities that really reduce our workload in these high workload situations. So now let's take a look at some of the newest capabilities of the GTN Xi series. The first is the glide indications, which we'll talk about a little bit more in depth in the demo that we offer. But what we're displaying is a glide range ring, indications to the best glide airport, as well as additional information in the nearest page that really helps should you need to access that information quickly. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. The second is the ability to tune the radios from a single GTN Xi with another GTN Xi installed. So to do that, I can just touch the standby of my GTN 750 comm. We've got a new radio page that we've added, and you can see now all of the radios populate here. And to change the radio, and let's say my GTN 650 Xi, I can come down here to my COM2, touch that frequency. I can find it based on my flight plan. And then I can load up the ATIS. Let's just say I want to put that now in my COM2 active. And now you can see the GTN 650 now has the ATIS loaded in that active position. So we give a lot of control to the pilot in a single interface with multiple GTNs Xis installed. And the third capability and feature that we are offering is quick page navigation. So this is actually really familiar if you're used to a GNS 430 or 530, even the TXi flight displays and some of our more products. We now offer the ability to navigate using the knobs and controls with familiar chapters and pages. So down here in the bottom right-hand corner of this GTN 750 Xi, you can see the map page there. You can see flight plan and traffic page, and it goes on for more. And by selecting the lower knob, you can flip through the pages fairly quickly. And now there's some staples that we've left from the GNS 430 and 530 as well on the ends. So you can go to the nearest all the way to the right, and you can flip all the way to the left of the 750 and reveal the map. Likewise, on the 650, you can move all the way to the left and reveal the navigation page, and then move all the way to the right for the nearest. So you always have those as anchor points. Now the pages in between are pilot selectable, so you can change those if you prefer. So now let's actually set up a real flight demo and show off all of these features working in a comprehensive and integrated way. So we're on the ground here at Palo Alto, and the first thing we need to do is get ready to taxi for departure. So before we do that, we need to pull up the ATIS and get our radios all set. So I'm going to demonstrate that. So I'm going to touch the Palo Alto airport, and I'm going to go to waypoint info and our frequencies tab. And here we list all the frequencies right in order that you would commonly need them. So the first on the list, of course, is the ATIS, so we can get our weather. I'm going to load that into the active COM1, followed by ground. I'm going to need that after I get done with that. Then I'm going to load the tower. I'm going to load that into the GTN 650 COM2 active. And then I'm going to anticipate a departure frequency after I get my clearance. That's loaded here as well. And we can adjust that if we get something different from ATC. But now you can see how quick that was to enter frequencies from the waypoint menu of a single GTN Xi navigator into all of the comms radios within your stack. So assuming we're taking the runway now, so we've taxied for departure, we're taking the runway, we're going to depart runway 31. I've got the cyan bug on my heading, so that lets me know as the pilot that I'm affecting the heading bug on the flight display. So I'm going to turn us, we'll say we're departing runway 31, just so set a handy reference to the departure runway. And then I'm going to set our altitude bug. I'm going to set that for 13,000 feet for flight down to Van Nuys today, which we're headed slightly to the east, and we'll be headed out on instruments. And then we can set our speed bug. I'll do that in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and manipulate the kiosk to get us moving into demo mode. So I'm going to take us up to an altitude of 13,000 feet and go ahead and give us an airspeed of about 170 knots at that altitude. So now we should start flying. I'm going to go ahead and activate our autopilot to get us heading on course. So autopilot engaged, nav is engaged, and our altitude is engaged at 13,000 feet. So now it's, right now we're turning to direct onto our course. As you can see, the flight display moving there as we build up our airspeed and as we move to that position. So now we're navigating that. So while we're flying now, I just wanted to take you through a handful of the features, starting with the GTN Xi that you have available. So we left off on the waypoint page. You have a wealth of information on this waypoint page for the airport. So as you're coming up on other airports or your rival airports, you can get additional information about them, the elevation. You can look at the charts available for that particular airport. You can preview the airport as well with Safe Taxi View if we have that database available. All the procedures are available for you to take a look at in the runways. You can also look at the frequencies that as we have, as well as the METAR and the TAF that we get from a data link source. Several data link sources available to GTN Xi and the system overall. You can get Sirius XM, which is really popular here, particularly here in the US. You can get ADS-B, FISB weather data link in, and you can get global weather from our GSR 56. You get some other benefits out of that, like voice calling and text messaging as well. But it'll populate the translated weather there for you. You notice it decodes it there for you. And then NOTAMs, we get that from our FISB, ADS-B end source here in the US as well. So those are available. So that's the waypoint information page. And again, we can scroll through these pages fairly quickly now. We've got the map. We've got the flight plan page. We were just on it. We've got the traffic page. This is really amazing with our modern ADS-B in and out transponders now. We get such a wealth of information. And we provide this target trend technology, which is unique to Garmin, which basically takes the velocity of the other aircraft in position as it relates to your own aircraft velocity, and then lets you know where you're going to intersect. So a really handy reference. So you can see that this aircraft here is of particular concern. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more to kind of understand what's going on there. We've got their tail number. Hopefully we don't see that tail number on that airplane. That's a little too close for me. But he is within our 2 nautical mile ring, and he's starting to highlight now. So this is certainly a threat that I would be concerned about. So moving on here, we've got a dedicated terrain page. So when you are in and around a dense terrain environment, like you would be in California at times, you can pull this up. If It'll show, right now it's not showing any terrain because it's relative to our current aircraft altitude and position. So there's nothing of concern in our immediate view. It does look like there is some. If we were to continue to fly our course, you would see some mountains that would be of concern at our current altitude of 13,000 feet, which is referenced there as well. Our Cirrus XM, we do have a little bit of precipitation that we're going through, so I'll keep an eye on that. It's if it's wintertime, obviously we'll want to be looking out for icing and that sort of thing, but hopefully we've done our due diligence ahead of time with our flight planning, and we're very well prepared for that hazard, and we're comfortable flying through this light precipitation that's being shown here by Cirrus XM in this case. And then our end of the anchor pages, the nearest page for additional situational awareness of our airports that are around us. And this is also where we'll find other airports where we can glide to. And right now there's no airports that are showing within our glide range now, but I'll show some here coming up that will be once we get to that spot. So let's see. So really the 750 Xi, just a larger display format MFD. The GTN 650 Xi is just as capable, just in a smaller display format. So there are some nuances, like the 750 Xi has the ability to control a remote audio panel, display charts, some things that the larger display format allows for that's just not feasible on the 650 Xi, but largely the same capability across the two products. So now let's move up to the G500 TXi flight displays, and I'll show some of the features that are available there. So right now you can see again, we've got the engine indication strip as well as our large format multifunction display with our aircraft on it, aircraft position. You got traffic, you got a range, so you can kind of get a sense of what's around you and how far things are from you, your aircraft position. You've got weather also being displayed in a single picture. And then similar to the chapters and pages that we just went through on the GTN, you've got similar ones on the TXi. So here you got dedicated traffic, terrain, charts. In this case, we've got a spot for weather radar, which is also capable on the GTN Xi series as well, but you can overlay weather radar here. You can overlay that directly onto the moving map as well. And then a dedicated engine page, so you can get additional information and insights into what's happening with your power plant. So you have some additional data fields up here. And I would say worth mentioning, if you're not a Cirrus aircraft owner and you're watching this video, the percent power gauge is limited to Cirrus aircraft, though we do calculate percent power for other airframes. It's just available in one of these data fields up here for your aircraft. So we will display percent power, just not in a gauge format like we would for a Cirrus aircraft. The other things we can do from the engine indication page is our lean find, so you can touch the lean, and this is going to help monitor our EGTs for the highest temperature as we pull back on the mixture control, and then it will help us target that particular EGT cylinder as well, and then help us understand the delta as we start to add in either rich a peak, add in additional mixture, or lean a peak, popular as well, as you pull the mixture further back and you know the reference point from that peak EGT point. So extremely helpful and a feature you'd expect of the system. And then you can touch through each of the CHT area here to go through each CHT temperature individually to see what those are. So that's just some of the features of the engine indication page. I think of note and interest for the system at large is that we are recording not only this engine indication information every second, but all of the flight parameters that we're collecting throughout the flight. So your GPS position is in there, any alerts that might come up. There's lots of data that we're logging every second that's coming into either an SD card on the display, or if you do opt for the FlightStream 510, which is really popular, to add the wireless connectivity, it's automatically going to offload to your iPad. And at the end of each flight, once that iPad hits the cloud and the internet, it's going to automatically upload all that information to the cloud for you to view on Fly Garmin at a later time. One of the other really neat features about the EIS is the ability to stream that in real time to your Garmin Pilot application and displaying that. So the neatest thing about that is it's almost like a YouTube video where you can scrub back in time. So in real time, you're able to understand if you hear a hiccup with your engine and you want to understand what might have happened or what the indications might have been doing while you might have heard that audibly, but you weren't staring at your engine indications. You can do that on your iPad really quickly and easily in flight, which is a really handy tool and unique to Garmin. I'm not aware of any other solutions that offer that today. So we've now gone through the TXi engine indication system and the dedicated multifunction display pages. Let's take a look at some of the features of the primary flight indications. And so you got very modern tapes that are displaying our airspeed, our altitude. This whole thing is our attitude, effectively. This line here is our horizon. The magenta is our flight director, driven by our G500. You've got the horizontal situation indicator. One of the really neat things that we've done with the HSI is put a moving map display, which we refer to as the HSI map. So this gives you, in your primary scan, particularly helpful when you're in actual IMC and you're keeping your scan tight on your primary instruments. Now you have, in that scan, additional situational awareness of other hazards around you, like terrain, traffic, weather, etc. So you've got all that in this moving map display right in your HSI. So you can see you're on course, all your other instruments are where they should be in giving you good indications there. So it's a really powerful tool right there in your primary field of view. So that's the HSI map. Coming up to the top of the display, you'll see we've got a scoreboard here of our autopilot enunciations, which give us the status of the modes that we have selected. So again, in this case, we activated GPS fairly quickly after departure. When we initiated the autopilot, you've got the autopilot enunciation. Our yaw damp is on, so our passengers in the back are happy. And it is holding our altitude, and it's showing the altitude at 13,000 feet that we're holding that altitude. Now below that, when we get into the arrival sequence, in Van Nuys, as well as the approach, we're going to start to see the modes that are armed that it will automatically sequence to when it gets to the right point in time. So we'll demonstrate that a little bit more detail as well. But again, you got all this situational awareness right here in your primary field of view, which just helps you give a good understanding of what's happening while you're in flight. So that's just a really good overview of the features and functions of all the products that are in this aircraft. What I'd like to do now is take a moment to speed up the demo, get us closer to the arrival, on the arrival into Van Nuys and on the approach there. So I fast forward us now to the Van Nuys terminal environment, and we're on the arrival. We're on the Venice 1 arrival with the transition here and terminating into the ILS 16 right approach. And so I've got the display split now here on the multifunction display to show just how capable and how much information you can have consolidated together here. So I've got the flight plan here for the arrival, and right now our active leg is from Zeppi to Venice, and you can see the altitude constraints here in the column. So right now we're at 9,000 feet, and we are getting ready to go down to 8,000 feet. Since we've got the integration in this system together with G500, it's going to fly all of that for us, leaving the pilot to effectively control the throttle of the aircraft and controls, so flaps, etc., when the time comes. But it will do all the flying. So we've got a good reference of where we need to be, where we should be, as well as the altitudes we should be at on our arrival coming in. It's got the active VNAV vertical navigation constraint right now. So event is coming up there, 8,000 feet, and it's got additional information. The bottom of descent, the time to that. Right now we're not moving. I have it frozen, so it's not moving. Otherwise you'd see these numbers actively changing as we got closer, of course. The other thing I want to point out now are glide indications that we recently released between hosted with the GTN Xi series products, but also displayed on the TXi series flight displays. So we'll start there. So we've got right now a moving map display, and you can see an outline of our eligible glide range for our aircraft. And it's taking into account our winds from a data link source like FISB ADS-B or Sirius XM as an example. It's taking into account terrain, and that's why it's not a perfect circle. It's kind of edged around and drawn around all the terrain limiting challenges that we would be unable to overcome. And then one of the more powerful things here is I've got an indication now of an airport off to my right. Should I experience an engine failure at this point, I know that I can steer the aircraft to head towards this aircraft or towards this airport, and that should be within glide distance based on all the inputs that the system knows about. So that's a really good, just handy reference should I need that quickly in flight. Now I'm going to move down to the GTN 750 Xi and show some additional features that it's going to tell us as part of this process. So I'm going to flip all the way to my anchor page on the GTN 750 Xi at the end, which is my nearest page. And now I've filtered my nearest preference for my aircraft to not display any airport with runways less than 3,000 feet. Well, the glide indications and features that we built in will pull in any airport irregardless of what setting you have there, and it will let you know what the limiting factor is. So in this case, Santa Paula, which is that airport that we've got a picture of off to our right, is 2,665 foot runway, and it's inverted the text there to let me know that that is a lesser length runway than I prefer. But it's going to give me that option, help let me know as the pilot, so I can make the decision about whether or not I want to glide to that airport and make a landing there. So a really powerful tool, comprehensive, not just with the moving map display and helping indicate which airports are within best glide range, but also providing you really good information about and recommendations about which airport is the best for your glide. So that's all the new glide indication features. So now I'm going to go ahead and speed us up and get us moving here again. And you'll start to see over here on the primary flight display our vertical navigation queue. So typically where you would see your indication for your ILS or your GPS approach, vertical guidance, is where this queue is coming in. So you got a magenta caret there, and you can see it's going to come into that. Right now our current altitude is set at we're flying at 9,000 feet, and our next altitude constraint is 8,000. And so when that queue comes in, it will automatically capture that and take us down to the next waypoint. We have to set the next altitude leg in our altitude select for that next altitude value. So it captures that and will come on down once we have that set. So that's really the only pilot action, is that you need to acknowledge each altitude constraint as it comes up by setting the next altitude constraint in your altitude select. So now we're coming down to 8,000 feet for our next waypoint and crossing there at Venice. And now we'll speed up to capture our approach, and I'll show off some of the features there. Okay, we're now have activated the approach into Van Nuys, and we're past the initial approach fix into Umber. I'm going to unfreeze the frame here now in our demo mode, and you're going to see some things come alive here on the primary flight display. So we've got our VNav armed. We're at an altitude that we're holding of 6,000. Vertical navigation's armed. You got the vertical navigation magenta Q coming in here. Now you've got the indication here on your lateral deviation bar here. Also, you can now see the ghosted needle in this box from the ILS coming in both on the lateral and on the vertical bar as well. And again, as soon as the VNav comes to the top of descent, it's going to take us. Now you can see the vertical navigation coming into the active mode on the autopilot, and it's going to continue us down to 4,900 feet. And then that will bring us intercept the vertical ILS glide path. And so now we can arm the approach mode. And so now we've got both VNav that's currently working as soon as it gets to, as soon as it captures the ILS vertically, it will take us all the way in to the approach. So again, really leaves the pilot to manage the aircraft power and flap configuration in the aircraft. And while this is going into the approach, I just briefly wanted to explain the go-around mode. So let's say that you get down to minimums and you're unable to see the airport environment. That's a high workload scenario, which we help quite a bit with our go-around mode. So of course, the first thing you're going to do as a pilot is add power. And then the second thing that you want to do is to activate our go-around mode so that you can queue up the command bars to give you an additional queue that'll be 10 degrees up. And so it'll give you just a really handy reference point to get the attitude of the aircraft in. And then it's going to, if your autopilot's still coupled down to 200 feet, it will remain coupled and it will automatically sequence the missed approach leg of the GTN. So that will leave you then really to activate the nav key of your autopilot to go to that next waypoint in the missed approach. So that's it. Then that really leaves you to clean up the flaps and anything else in the aircraft that needs to be done. So that's our go-around mode, as well as vertical navigation with the G500, all integrated into this package. Thank you for watching. If you have additional questions, please visit a Garmin dealer or visit us online at garmin.com.